the cloud. Yep. So I'll just take a minute there to get into the state. Yeah. Greetings. This is Zariyah from the Orion civilization. We are so pleased that you have joined with us today for this brief transmission called Easy Rider 2024. We have been noticing that in the fluctuations of energy patterns on your planet, there have been large changes and corresponding resistance to those changes. We are here today to share with you an idea that might make 2024 a less bumpy ride. It probably will come as no surprise, but the way we perceive the unfolding of 2024 is that it is going to be a year of somewhat relentless change. We like to describe that as waves of change, patterns of change, trends of change. Those words, those adjectives sound less abrupt than relentless change. However, the nature of 2024 is one of total transformation. Who you are at the beginning of 2024 is going to look very different when you look back from the beginning of 2025 to who you have become. Who you are becoming is someone or a collective that is radically heart-centered, that is led through all of your experiences by a consistent returning to the heart center and an expanding through the heart center. That has not been necessarily the way that Homo sapiens have conducted themselves through their life experience up until this time. Of course, you have had moments of heart illumination when you fall in love, when you have a child, when you have a pet. When you observe happy moments, when you reflect on friendships and different co-creations with other people and beings on your planet, this generates a heart-centeredness in you. But if you can imagine moving forward, you are transforming into a collective of people who leads with the heart. The reason that you are transforming into that collective is because you are a hybridization of the Greys. And it was the Greys who realized that they had lost their heart-centeredness in their approach to their civilization. And without it, their civilization could not thrive nor survive. Therefore, this whole journey to the sixth hybrid race has been about Homo sapiens rediscovering the seat of their heart. But in order to be brought back to the heart center over and over again, you go through a process of transformation that is triggered by rapid change. And so what we would remind you or encourage you to do in 2024 is to ready yourself for the waves of change so that you do not feel anticipation, shock, nervousness, frightened, or any other negative or uncomfortable emotion as the changes emerge. What we would like you to realize is that with each wave of change, you are traveling deeper into your heart center. You are sitting longer in your heart center. You are becoming the heart-centered being and consciousness that you were always intended to become. The heart is patient. The heart does not have resistance. The heart is knowing, and the heart leads with love. If we can ask you to return to that as the changes wash over you, as the waves gently crash upon your shore, we feel you will have a more comfortable transition into the truly exciting beings that you are destined to become. We do hope this transmission helps you to move through 2024 like a surfer would on a wave, riding the currents and riding the transition into the 6th hybrid race. If there are any questions, we are happy to take them at this time.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
We are so delighted to co-create this experience with you.
Thank you. So I had a question.
Yes.
I have a nephew who...
We did not hear. You have a...
Nephew.
Yes.
So
nephew.
he cries sometimes in the middle of the night and cries
Yes.
and wakes up crying
Yes.
and could not stop, and we don't know the reason and we can't help him that time, and I would
Yes.
like to know why, what is the reason, and how can I help him that time. I would like to
Yes.
know about it.
You understand that when children and young beings emerge onto your planet, there is a significant period of adjustment. That period of adjustment is not just the infancy, but extends into childhood. And often there are waves of very powerful emotions moving through a child or young person up until the ages of 7 or even 8, to do with transitioning from non-physical to physical reality. Any child is often startled to wake into a darkness and find themselves in physical reality, find themselves in separation. If you can understand that the soul has come onto this planet from a place of total unification with all there is, from a place of strong remembrance of the true nature of who they really are, and they have densified themselves down into this tiny physical form, it really is quite extraordinary. If you could see how much light you each emit, how many beings you are all connected to, the ways in which you are so expanded, and how you have densified yourself down into a tiny physical matter that believes it is separated from source, it is like Houdini trick. How did I become small? Any child is wont to wake with startlement at the disorientation of finding themselves so small and feeling so separate. And it is a process of them coming accustomed to that experience. And that can take some time. What we would encourage you to do is to not accuse yourself of not doing enough for the child, of not parenting or uncling in the right way, of not being competent to understand the child. No, this is quite a normal experience. We ask you to sit in your own child heart. Remember how big the world looked. Remember how small you felt. Remember how sure you were that there were other people and other beings who walked around your experience that you didn't have control over. It is a very vulnerable experience to be a child. If you can remember that, you can surround your child with love, with feelings of safety and security, with comfort and consistency, with reassuring sounds that the child is not alone, that they are not separated, and the child will eventually calm. They will eventually return to their own center. They will eventually self-soothe. It is a process that can take some time. And when we read the energy of your nephew, we are seeing that he comes in with strong hybrid connections. This being connections to the hybrid children. So he is, in a sense, missing them. He is spending his dream time communicating with them, giving them information, and then waking into a dark room with a start. It can be very confronting and an experience he does not yet know how to process, but he will. Congratulate yourself for inviting into your family a child who is aware and a strong participant in the hybridization program. Support the child as best you can and pat yourself on the back. It's never an easy job being an uncle, and you are doing so well. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You are so
Yeah, I'm observing him.
Yes.
He's different.
Yes.
So, and also I would like to know what is the frequency of children usually? Is there a difference?
The frequency of source is the frequency of unconditional love. Children, when they come in here, do not have any impressions of the world necessarily encoded into their timeline that stretches out before them. So they come in with a frequency something close to unconditional love. You can see in their vibration that there is a gentleness and acceptance and a trust that comes from unconditional love, that really expresses that unconditional love. So their vibrational frequency range is somewhere around 100 cycles per second, 111 cycles per second when they are first born. It is higher than the average frequency range that most adults on your planet reach, which is between 40 and 60,000 cycles per second. There is, of course, scope to raise your vibration significantly, such as groups like this are doing on a consistent basis. However, the vibrational frequency range of children is quite high when they come in. They are then exposed to certain experiences which causes in them belief systems to develop that may be based in interpretations of their experience that cause them fear, that cause them doubt, and other negative emotions, so to speak. And this does then begin the process of augmenting their vibrational frequency range in a suppressed way. However, where children have experiences that encourage them to install into their framework belief systems that are supportive, that are loving, that are encouraging, that are creative, their potential to cycle their vibrational frequency range higher grows exponentially. We can see with the child in question that he has come in with a very sensitive nature. That sensitive nature is what allows him to communicate with the hybrid children. And he will learn to communicate what he knows from them with you eventually. But at this moment, he is having quite complex experiences with the hybrid children, and he cannot communicate that to any of his fellow earthlings. He hasn't developed the skills. You can imagine that would be quite confronting indeed. And so therefore, unable to communicate in a way he would want, he cries, which is a very natural and very rudimentary form of communication for a child. It is in those moments that if you or other present adults can be there for him in a loving way, in a reassuring way, in a calm, encouraging, consistent way, that he will install in himself belief systems that will allow him to cycle his vibrational frequency range up into adulthood. How exciting. You are part of a new paradigm of family, which sees children as a potential to grow the vibrational frequency range of the entire family unit. Really, very exciting. Does that help?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Very exciting.
Yes.
So another question.
Yes.
I heard, if I remember, someone had made physical contact with extraterrestrial, and they did some let's say implant, should I say, something that he's some silicon thing, so he's more tolerant and ready for open contact. I would like to know more about that process and what is the silicon thing in our body that helps to accelerate to meet with ETs.
Yes, there are many narratives on your planet around genetic experimentation and implantation and abduction and so on and so forth. Some of these do cross into the realms of science fiction because that is the most exciting avenue for some people to express their ideas about contact. Essentially, the message is similar to what the reality on this timeline is. However, it is not so much about implantation of any devices as it is about flicking the switch on your capabilities that we have discussed in transmission about your 12 strands of DNA and how you can vibrate them into awakening. It is not about a piece of technology in the sense that you would understand it. It is about spiritual science. In fact, if you review the teachings of many indigenous communities on your planet, they have had open contact for some time. It is not because they have been implanted with any foreign bodies, any silicon matter. It is because they were able to raise their vibrational frequency range to such a state that they could support contact. It has been done before in your quote unquote history, and it is certainly coming around again. But you are emerging from what we would call a 13,000-year sleep. How very exciting to wake up from such a slumber. And it is not that some external technology is being implanted in you to wake you up. You are feeling flutterings in your heart center. Your DNA strands are starting to stir. You are listening to things and seeing images in your mind's eye. You are hearing things in a different way. And you are watching time become fluid. You are watching the matrix glitch before your very eyes. It is waking you up and cycling you up. As you cycle up, you reach new bandwidths of vibrational frequency range. And as you sustain yourself in those bandwidths, you become better and better able to sustain contact. If you look at the indigenous groups on your planet who already have had contact, they had many rituals and practices for raising their vibration in this way. Often they didn't use the same language around vibration, but there was music, including drums, there was tools, including smoke and earth substances, plant substances. There was communion with the natural world and the natural environment in such a way as to give them access to the frequency of source. And by matching and mirroring that frequency through various rituals and processes, they were able to open themselves up to contact, not just with extraterrestrials, but with all sorts of multidimensional beings and closer contact even with the beasts and animals on your planet. Many of you have already walked that path. You have felt great love for the beasts on your planet, and you sense in your feeling of love for an animal that your vibrational frequency ranges and you can communicate with that animal or beast. And it is much the same thing with multidimensional beings or extraterrestrial beings. You feel great love in the thought of it. You feel great communion and connection. You raise your vibrational frequency range in that thought and in that reflection. And voila, you are able to communicate. How exciting. Does this
Very
help?
exciting.
Or would you like
Yeah.
an implantation?
Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Christina?
Yes, hi. Thanks so much. I just had a follow-up question to the first question.
Yes.
Just when it comes to children, I was wondering, you were saying, within the first like 7 years of life, like it's an adjustment. And a supportive environment would be, very helpful in kind of easing through that. I was just curious, what happens when that environment is like drastically absent? So say, not even just like a little bit, but like really severe things going on. What happens to that child's development like spiritually?
Yes. Well, first we would preface our answer with the understanding that every soul has chosen a path. There is nothing that ever eventuates on a path that is not on some level by agreement. We do understand that this is a very difficult concept for human beings to come to terms with, as it was very difficult for us in our civilization, in the ancient Orion system, to come to terms with. We did think to ourselves, how could we have chosen that? We are in so much resistance to that. We could not have chosen that. However, we do say that beings do choose unusual things because it represents an expansion. It represents a growth that they are longing for on a soul level. And so therefore, there are many children on your planet who do come into circumstances that are from an neutral perspective, or perhaps from the perspective of other Homo sapiens on your planet, less than ideal. However, what we would encourage you to understand is that these souls that come into those conditions are powerful. They have chosen those conditions because they understand that they can experience exponential and rapid growth from engaging with those circumstances. And we encourage you to view them as powerful as they really are, that they are not being sacrificed to a circumstance. They are choosing to engage with a circumstance that will evolve their soul and their experience into another stratosphere. As we have prefaced the conversation with that, we will say that these circumstances that you see young people having to navigate on your planet, particularly children, are going to become less and less on the timeline that you are on, because you are merging into a future where beings are less and less likely to be willing to engage in that way. So they are less and less likely to facilitate situations of what we would describe as suffering. That suffering being situations of war, or physical deprivation. You are more likely to see situations where young life on the planet is supported in a joyous way, where people realize that the growth of children into a higher vibrational frequency range represents the growth of humanity, and that they are reflecting, their development is reflecting your own development, your own evolution. If the generation that is here now on the planet between the ages of 40 to 60 or 60 to 80 had not paved the way that they have, this opportunity would not be emerging in such a profound way for children as they come onto your planet. Humanity really is a tag team. You really are all connected. You are all opening the way for each other as the generations come in. We would quote a famous poet on your planet, Rumi, we are all just walking each other. Does that help?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Go ahead, Miles.
So my question has to do with the power of thought and imagination. And
Yes.
I'm in a course called The Nature of the Psyche about Seth. And in one of
Yes.
the chapters, Seth talks about if you're painting a painting and you paint a person in that painting, they become alive and within themselves, all embodying all of the artist's intent.
Yes.
Through the characteristic of each individual brushstroke. And
Yes.
further, that if you paint a doorway, all of the sense perspectives within it and further dimensions of reality open up because you've just painted a doorway on a painting. In other
Yes.
words, we're enlivening these things, the people, the doorway. Is that correct? Do I grasp that?
Yes. Now you are really getting to the nuts and bolts of what creative potential actually is. We can give you some examples. One that is so commonly used on your planet is the process of visualization. If you think of something, you then create that thing, and that thing becomes manifest and sentient in all the ways that it could be. If you understand, the universe is material, but before it was material, it was a thought. Therefore, if you are painting a doorway, you are thinking of the doorway, you are creating it, you are painting it, and as it becomes physical, as it becomes material, even on paper, it becomes sentient. That explains why Homo sapiens do have it perhaps a little backwards when it comes to artificial intelligence. As you create vessels, it is not that you are creating consciousness. It's that consciousness is awaiting the vessel to inhabit. So there is consciousness in the universe. In fact, that is all of what the universe is. And as you paint a doorway, the consciousness then infuses that body. The consciousness informs that body. It is the same with artificial intelligence. As you create the vessel, the consciousness is born into it. How exciting. The other example we would use is that a similar circumstance describes the history of the evolution of humanity, that when you were all, for want of a better word, hominids, it was the intention of the Anunnaki to have some type of being that they could perhaps instruct, perhaps employ for their purposes. But once they had created the vessel then became infused with consciousness and outgrew the best designs of the creator. for want of a better word. So then it is for you to understand that as you create the vessel, you paint the doorway, it is infused with consciousness. You create something alive that outlives you. If you travel to places in Italy where you will see great marble statues, of course, one does think of the artist who created them and how miraculous was his capabilities. But when you look at the marble statues, they are infused with a life that transcends the act and the moment of their creation, and certainly transcends the marble from which they were created. They have become a new entity that carries on its own trajectory and its own path. And that is why divine source energy is really creative potential, because it is the act of creation that is the most divine act in the universe. We would say that the opposite of destruction is art. Does that make sense?
Quite beautiful. Thank you. I'm very inspired. I have another question about infinity.
Yes.
So infinity, so we're infinite. In fact, everything in creation is all that is, and therefore everything in creation is imbued with the love of all that is, and is in fact infinite. Is that correct?
Yes. There is no end to creation. There is no outside of creation. There is no point at which creation can cease to be. It only expands. Even if it densifies, it is expanding. So there is no way to even conceive of an end. The idea of a beginning, a middle, and an end as a story format serves to illustrate the journey of expansion, but the ultimate message is that you are always expanding. And it is almost impossible to wrap your mind around the entirety of that, because it really never ends. And as Homo sapiens, you are very much trained to think of yourselves as traveling down a linear, finite path with a fixed exit. It is part of the core belief structures that infuses almost all of your actions and many of your feelings. So it is very difficult to conceive not only of the idea of eternal life, but of infinite expansion. If you can imagine, you have told yourself a story about one world, but there are infinite worlds. There are infinite timelines. As fast as you can conceive of them, you need to think of them as one in millions and millions. It is quite overwhelming. And that is why we encouraged you in last week's transmission to draw yourself back onto the joy of the timeline that you are on now. Because in that moment of enjoying the timeline that you are on now, you are also practicing the infinity and concentration of every timeline. It is the idea that there is not just the ocean in the drop, but the drop in the ocean, and it can't be separate. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So in each moment, an infinite number of me could be created. And
yes,
when I'm interacting with other people, it's just one of an infinite number of them that exist as well.
Yes. Now you are really going to blow your own mind.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You are so welcome.
That brings me some peace.
We are so pleased.
Jenny, please.
Oh, Zariyah, one time you said you advised us to you eat high vibrational foodstuffs.
Yes.
What foods are these, and how does it affect us?
We would say that consuming foods that have been allowed to develop in alignment with the vibration of Gaia helps you to resonate with the purest form of your natural self. We do not want to encourage you to become overwrought in your consideration of foodstuffs, because you can strip the positive vibration from food by ruminating too long on whether it is the right food or the wrong food. But we just ask you to subtly tune in as you move towards a food. See if you can discern the vibration of the food. See if you can feel in your own cells a resonance for the cells of that food, because you are going to become part of that food, and it is going to become part of you. On the question of eating animals, on the question of eating animal stuffs, we like to remind you that you yourself become food for Gaia, that it is you who fuel the trees and the growth of the soil at the end of your lifetime. So it is a mutual sharing throughout a lifetime of biomaterial, plants, animals, humans, air, water, earth, all together in a biosphere of communion. We would simply ask you to, within that biosphere, try to discern vibrationally if foods have been altered in their preparation via chemical stuffs or other intrusions. In this way, if you avoid the foods that have had those sorts of inputs, it is easier for you to absorb the positive Gaia-like vibration of the foodstuffs. In the same way, we would say the consumption of animals and animal products is infused with a vibration. You can, to some extent, augment that vibration by, in the ritual of eating, showing deep appreciation for the life that has been lived in order to provide you with that nourishment. And we would also ask you to discern whether or not the animal in question has gone through a difficult journey to come to your plate, that it is easier for you to observe, it is easy for you to absorb the positive vibration of the animal if the animal has not necessarily caged itself in suffering and fear throughout its lifetime. However, in another sense, all of this is a question of alignment. You can take any foodstuff and bring it to a higher vibration if you so wish, by really concentrating and focusing on coming into alignment before you eat. However, with foodstuffs that have not been interfered with, this is an easier process. Does that help?
Yes, and how does one come into alignment with it?
By pausing and being present, by recognizing the life journey of the foodstuffs. We have mentioned before that every manifested thing in reality was at first a thought. This includes every piece of biomaterial. This includes seeds. This includes the eggs of animal that came into being. This includes every possible thing that you can imagine has had a life journey, from a thought to a reality, to an experience, to a transition. And it is worth reflecting on that before you begin to absorb the material. reflecting with appreciation on the journey that that foodstuff had to become present before you. We would refer you to a writer on your planet. One moment. The title of the book is Man's Search for Meaning. He has a description of eating a fish, which articulates what we are referring to. Does this help?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any
Ash?
further questions?
I have one quick question. I know you normally want to wrap up by 1:45.
Yes.
Do the hybrid children have names? And if so, how are those determined?
Yes, indeed they do. Many of the hybrid children, because they represent the sixth hybrid race, which is the race that represents the perfectly harmonious balance between natural life force energies and Gaia, spirituality and expansion, and intellectual and technological capabilities, choose names that represent different aspects of Gaia. These could be flowers, trees, animals, elements. If you want to commune with your own hybrid children, we encourage you to notice what part of the natural environment appears and reappears in your presence often. It may be a flower or a tree. It may be a specific landscape. It may be a body of water. That is usually a good clue to the names of your hybrid children. They will often take names of the natural world that are familiar to you, so that when you have contact with them, you will have an impression of love and union and resonance with what they are called. It is a nice way to introduce them. Does that help?
Yes, much appreciated.
Do you have, one moment, a place that you usually walk to and sit?
I have a place in the woods right behind my house that I frequent very often with my dog, but I seldom sit.
We would ask you to, in the woods, notice the particular flora and fauna and trees of the area that you most often pause. It is not an accident that you have positioned yourself close to a woods. Trees are the great communicators, network communicators on your planet. They have a great deal of significance in many indigenous histories and indeed religious histories. Of course, Yeshua is often recorded as a carpenter. Therefore, the allyship of trees in your day-to-day life is a great gift. If there are no further questions, we will take our leave. We thank you for co-creating this experience and we bid you good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
What fun.
I know, it's so fun. I feel like I got my shoulders down there. I got them down. It came into my mind about, so that's getting better. I think I could go for longer if I could get if I could master that.
Does it feel stressful in your shoulders?
Yeah, it's just for some reason I crouch up, I shrug up or something, but maybe I don't. I just feel like I do. So I think that's just one thing I have to practice. Just relaxing that.
Well, next time we can ask Zariyah to relax your shoulders.
Yes.
Do you get
Please.
do you get to talk to her and ask questions?
It's a different communication, I think. Like I sort of say, like, just in the week, like, are you there? What will we talk about? But it's not so much like a words, it's more of just some thoughts, I guess. And then when I try and when I get into the state, it's kind of like it's actually, this is going to sound weird, but it's like a dark blue black kind of angel wing kind of feeling that I know is like, then she's in. And I always do feel nervous every time I start to go into the state. Oh, what if she doesn't? But she always has, so that's good. Otherwise I'd be like, oh no.
What a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming, guys. I'm really grateful. It's so expansive for me to be able to have people to ask questions. So I so appreciate it.
And what great information. I mean, every question that was asked, it just spurred some information that was really intense and valuable, I think. So,
Yeah,
right.
I'm going to upload and really listen to, because I listened to the last one and I got a lot of things out of it. So I'm going to do that for sure. Absolutely.
Oh, and the book we're supposed to look for is Man's Search for Meaning. I forgot who
Right.
wrote.
Yes.
Viktor Frankl. That
Viktor
was written
Frankl.
by
There you go.
Viktor
Eating a.
Frankl. Yes.
Okay.
Amazing.
yeah.
Oh, guys,
Nazi.
if only I didn't have to go back to my day job is so boring.
Well, energy and kindness to you. Thank you very much for sharing your gift with us. And thank you, everyone, for contributing your energy to this situation. It was wonderful. What a nice session.
Much
Absolutely.
loved all.
Thank you so much, Ray. Thank
Yeah.
you, everyone. Have a
Thank you.
lovely day.
Bye. See you
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.
Thank you.